As you are all aware, we will be discussing the IR related current affairs, and today I have taken these two very important topics for you, which are very important from your examination perspective. So, we will discuss in detail the important regional grouping, that is ASEAN, and the economic cooperation agreement that they have signed in the form of RCEP, right? Who are all are the members of ASEAN and RCEP. We will be studying why has India not become a party to RCEP, right? All of those aspects we will be discussing in this lecture. So, let us begin the discussion for now. So, first of all, let us see what ASEAN is, what are the countries that are contributing as the members of this region, right. So, basically as the full form says, ASEAN is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, right. So, a regional organization has been established to provide cooperation in these Southeast Asian region, right. Southeast Asia से आप क्या समझते हैं? Let's say that this is India for you, right. So, the countries that are majorly lying to the southern eastern side, right, of India, you can say these are Southeast Asian countries, right. So, these include all these number of countries: Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, right, these countries, and then Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Brunei, right. All of these 10 members, 10 countries are members of ASEAN, right. 10 members are there in ASEAN, right, of all these Southeast Asian region, right. आपका पूरा जो एशिया region है, if you see, not just with respect to India, if you see the entire Asian region, that has been divided into multiple parts. South Asia, that constitutes your India and India's subcontinent, जो भी countries India and उसकी neighborhood में है, they majorly constitute this South Asia, right. Then countries to the east of India are referred to as the Southeast Asian countries, right. Then there are countries to the west of India also, that part comprises West Asia, including Arabian countries and several others, right. Then here at the center of the Asian continent you see Central Asia, right. So, इस तरीके से एशियन कॉन्टिनेंट को डिफरेंट पार्ट्स में डिवाइड किया गया है और इनकी प्रोमिनेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस भी है टू फैसिलिटेट रीजनल कोऑपरेशन. सो जैसे आप साउथ एशिया की देखिए, वी हैव सार्क एज अ डोमिनेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन फैसिलिटेटिंग कोऑपरेशन अमंग्स द कंट्रीज ऑफ साउथ एशिया, राइट. वैसे ही यू हैव अ grouping for facilitating cooperation in the Southeast Asian countries, and that is what has come to be known as ASEAN, right. So, ये 10 Southeast Asian countries that have decided to cooperate on issues of mutual interest, that is what has resulted in the formation of your ASEAN as the regional grouping, right. Now, this grouping is focused on ensuring economic growth of the region, right, and ensuring stability in the region. जितने भी issues हैं उनको मिलके solve कर सके और region की co-prosperity पे focus किया जा सके. The welfare of the people living in the region, that can be ensured, that is the objective. So, and prelims के perspective से, objective type questions के perspective से also know the secretariat of ASEAN, that is located in Indonesia, right. Jakarta में है, which is located in Indonesia. So, that information can be useful in answering objective type questions. Now, there are a number of objectives which the organization is trying to achieve, right. There are number of objectives. One is to ensure the economic growth of the region, right. All these countries, they have come together, they have joined their hands to ensure that the economy of the region could proceed further in a positive manner, right. All the member nations, they have collaborated to ensure their economic growths, right. ये countries आप देखिए, if you see the countries of this region, they might face different kind of challenges and issues in their development. All of these countries are, you see, small nations, small economies having less development, right? So these countries, they are trying to focus on the economic growth and they want to collaborate with each other to achieve that economic growth. That is why that is the first objective of ASEAN, to work on joint economic growth, right? Then ensuring regional peace and security. Now these countries also want to collaborate to solve the issues, to solve various kind of threats and disputes that might arise in the region, right? अब देखिए countries के interest जो हैं, they can clash, right? So what will they do? They will use ASEAN as a platform to sit for talks on the issues that are there in the region, right? So ASEAN will provide a platform for talks, a platform for talks on various issues. Can be economic issues, can be political issues, can be security issues, right? Can be the issue of Chinese aggression, right? On any manner, the countries can decide to sit together and talk and ensure regional peace, stability and security, right? That is why the next objective is to ensure regional peace and security, right? Then they will also focus on taking forward the cultural heritage of the region, for which they intend to promote the Southeast Asian studies. ठीक है, इस साउथ ईस्ट एशियन स्टडीज़ में किया क्या जाएगा? साउथ ईस्ट एशिया के पास्ट को स्टडी किया जाएगा, उसके कल्चर को रिवाइव करने की कोशिश की जाएगी. द एफर्ट विल बी टू रिवाइव द नॉलेज अबाउट साउथ ईस्ट एशियाज पास्ट, इट्स कल्चर, its architectural heritage, right? So to increase the knowledge of the world about the historical treasures of ASEAN countries of the Southeast Asian regions, this grouping will promote Southeast Asian studies also, right? So that is why this is important. What is the recent India's issue to receive by Asian platform? What do you want to ask? Please write more clearly. I am not able to understand your doubt. Right. So the third objective is to promote Southeast Asian studies. The fourth is to collaborate on, various issues. Like I told you that this region might be facing different kind of challenges and issues. It can be the issue of poverty. It can be the issue of low industrial growth. It can be the issue of Chinese aggression, right? It can be the issue of fishermen. These countries are basically, you can say maritime economy पे बहुत इनकी economy depend करती है. So they might face issues in the ensuring the interest of fishermen. So they may have various issues that are common to them. So they can collaborate, provide mutual assistance in dealing with those issues, right? So on various issues of common interest, they can provide collaboration and mutual assistance to each other. That is also their objective, to help each other grow better and solve the issues that each country is facing, right? And then they will interact with other organizations of the world also, which have common aims and purposes, right? They have a aim, that is economic growth of Southeast Asia, right? So now they will collaborate with all other like-minded groupings at regional or international level that will help them achieve their objectives of growth, peace, stability, right? And on fighting various issues that they face. That is how is the last objective of ASEAN. These are the main objectives. Now, what is the relevance of ASEAN for India? Why are we discussing ASEAN? What is the significance of ASEAN for India, right? Now, you see, that is the important part. ASEAN is a large area. ASEAN contains a lot of developing countries. आप ये सारी countries देखिए, all these countries are developing nations. Most of these are developing nations who need, you know, goods, who needs services, services like educational services, medical services, accountancy services, or legal services, right? So there are multiple services that are being sought by this region, right? So वो भी इंडिया प्रोवाइड कर सकता है. इंडिया कैन सेल द गुड्स ऑल्सो, इंडिया कैन सेल टेक्नोलॉजी, right? So this region has a huge potential to be India's market for trade in goods or in services, right? So इसीलिए ये region ASEAN is very important for India, because India can sell its goods and services, especially services, because India में बहुत youth population है and the youth population is seeking employment, right? So we can send our educated youth in the form of teachers, medical professionals, lawyers, accountants to these countries who are who face the deficit of such services in trade, right? So India can benefit hugely by trading goods and services with these 10 nations, 10 impactful nations of the world, especially the trade in services, right? Now, since these countries are growing countries, their economies are growing also, so India can put its money also into this region, right? आप इनके invest इनके developmental projects में you can put money and return and earn handsome returns on those investments. ठीक है, आप पैसा डालेंगे इन economies में, you will earn good interest from those investments, right? You can also establish business opportunities in this countries. बहुत सारे businesses, बहुत, जैसे आप banking services की बात कर लीजिए, accountancy services, tourism businesses, different kind of business opportunities are also provided by this region. आप हर जगह invest भी कर सकते हैं, अपने entrepreneurs को send भी कर सकते हैं towards these economies to reap the economic potential of the region, right? So आप investments कर सकते हैं, आप business opportunities भी attain कर सकते हैं, and that is why also this ASEAN region is very relevant for India, very significant for India, right? Now this ASEAN region, it is sitting at the head of your Indo-Pacific region, right? Indo-Pacific region क्या है? The region that is connecting, that is bordered by the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So just give me a minute. So Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean. So you see, this region, these countries are sitting at the head of the Indo-Pacific. So Indo-Pacific में जितने भी resources है, there is lot of trade that is passing out of Indo-Pacific. There are lot of minerals that are there in the Indo-Pacific. There can be oil, there can be gas that is there in Indo-Pacific. There are rare earth elements in the Indo-Pacific. There are polymetallic nodules in the Indo-Pacific, right? So this Indo-Pacific region has huge potential for to be leveraged for the economic benefits. So ये सब हम कैसे leverage कर सकते हैं? When we partner with the like-minded country who have the claims in this Indo-Pacific, right? So अब देखिए, इन countries के around ही बहुत Indo-Pacific का area है. If you want to explore this area of Indo-Pacific, you will have to collaborate with the ASEAN countries, right? So again, ASEAN becomes very important for you if you want to use the resources, the treasure that is being offered by Indo-Pacific region, right? ASEAN can be a way for you to reap the benefit of Indo-Pacific resources. For example, आप इसकी example देखिए. For example, India is collaborating with Vietnam. India की company ONGC Videsh Limited, right? It is putting its money and efforts in Vietnam to explore the natural gas reserves coming from the South China Sea, right? South China Sea is a part of Indo-Pacific, right? So India is able to leverage the benefits out of Indo-Pacific by collaborating with one of the ASEAN nation, that is Vietnam, right? ऐसी collaboration India की और भी ASEAN countries से है. So India can take the advantage of the resources provided by India Indo-Pacific region by partnering with these important nations that lie at the boundary of Indo-Pacific, right? So ASEAN forms a very important part for India to reap benefits of Indo-Pacific, especially the South China Sea. The South China Sea part of the Indo-Pacific. ये बहुत important point है. Try to get it in your notes, right? Now the next important relevance of ASEAN is the geostrategic location of ASEAN. A very important location that ASEAN presents. Again, let's check the map to understand the relevance of the location of this area. Right. So now you see is taraf you have the Bay of Bengal. Try to make a picture of this region on the world map. Try to imagine this region on the world map. World map mein you will see Bay of Bengal towards this side, right? And here we have an important choke point of the Indian Ocean passing through this ASEAN countries. Can you tell me in the comment section which is this important choke point that is linking ASEAN to the Indo-Pacific? Tell me in the comment section that which is this important strategic choke point that is located in this ASEAN world. इसी की वजह से इसकी relevance बहुत ज़्यादा है, right? इधर we have Bay of Bengal, here we have South China Sea, important South China Sea, then you see Pacific Ocean emerging, right? So अब इसकी location की relevance समझने के लिए you need to know this important water body that is here. Yes, Kanu, very good. This linking body is the Strait of Malacca. Strait of Malacca linking the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea and then moving towards Pacific Ocean, right? So you see the location of this region is very important because on the major trade routes of Indo-Pacific that are passing mainly via this Strait of Malacca, this ASEAN grouping, the countries of ASEAN grouping are located at the head of these major trading routes. आपका जितना world trade है, majority of that world trade, majority of the oil shipments, majority of the commercial shipments, they are passing through Strait of Malacca towards the other parts of the world, right? So अगर आपको अपना dominance maintain रखना है इस trade routes पे, then again you need cooperation from the member nations of ASEAN, right? For example, आप इसकी भी example ले लीजिए. Now India has established one of its port at Singapore's Changi port. Changi या Changi, however you like to call it. Singapore has this important port that is Changi port, right? And here India has, just Air India has, this is Singapore, so here India has established this Changi port. So you see towards important Strait of Malacca का जो आपका route है, let's use some other color. This Strait of Malacca that is passing at the head of this Strait of Malacca, India has positioned itself, right? So now India can very well watch the movement of international trade, international movement of oil, gas or any other commodity or shipment passing through this strategic choke point of the world, right? So the ASEAN countries have such a geostrategic location that any country who partners with these ASEAN countries, that can benefit from the locational relevance of this region, right? So जैसे ये स्ट्रेट ऑफ मलाक्का पे इंडिया ने अपना एक नेवल पोर्ट दे हैव ट्राइड टू एस्टैब्लिश, राइट? So that is again the next relevance of ASEAN, right, for India especially. Now India can also cooperate with the ASEAN countries to ensure rule based security architecture in the Indo-Pacific, right? You see, we are increasingly witnessing Chinese aggression in the Indo-Pacific, especially in the South China Sea. China does not abide by the international rules and laws and regulations, right? It is trying to dominate over the resources, the trade routes, the sea lanes of the Indo-Pacific, especially the South China Sea, right? And this is a cause of worry for the ASEAN nations, right? क्यों? किस लिए? Because you see, majority of the conflict of these ASEAN nations is over the issue of South China Sea, ठीक है? ये countries जो हैं, they are very well impacted by the high Chinese aggression in the South China Sea, right? So these countries, they are not able to leverage the full benefit of South China Sea because of the growing Chinese aggression. China does not follow the rules of law in the region, right? So now to establish those rules of law in, rules of international law in the region, India can collaborate with these ASEAN countries, right? India can partner with the ASEAN countries to ensure that the rules of international bodies, they are adhered to, right? That the rules and regulations that are set by the international fora, they are adhered. So that is why to enforce international rule of law, जो rule of law की बात करते हैं कि सब कायदे कानून से चलना चाहिए, कोई भी एक इंडिविजुअल या एक कंट्री अपना डोमिनेंस या अपनी अग्रेशन नहीं शो करेगी. जो इंटरनेशनल रूल्स में लिखा है, जो इंटरनेशनल रेगुलेशंस में लिखा है, you will abide by those regulations, right? So to ensure that happens in Indo-Pacific, India can partner with the ASEAN nations who have a common interest in ensuring, this rule of law. Who have a common interest in ensuring this rule of law in the Indo-Pacific, because they are also being impacted by a China who does not follow the rule of international law. Okay? So this is a very important point. To ensure that rule of law is followed in international affairs, especially in the Indo-Pacific, India can collaborate with these countries, right? And last and most important point, the development of Northeast can be ensured by India by collaborating with the ASEAN nations. See on map again. Let's draw a map here. So you see, this is broadly the northeast of India, and this is connected to the countries of Myanmar, Thailand, and going forward you will see Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, right? Then going, moving even further, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, right? So this northeast of India can be developed if India collaborates with the ASEAN world. If India has to connect with this ASEAN countries, it will definitely move via northeast of India, right? It will have to move from the northeast of India, right? So that means you can be sending goods, and services from नॉर्थ ईस्ट itself. ठीक है, नॉर्थ ईस्ट की डेवलपमेंट कैसे होगी? आप नॉर्थ ईस्ट के थ्रू ही अपना या तो पूरा ट्रेड मूव करेंगे, या यू विल यूज द गुड्स एंड सर्विसिंग, यू विल प्रोड्यूस दोज गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज within the northeastern part of India and then connect with the ASEAN nations, right? So आप देखिए कि different ways में नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंडिया की डेवलपमेंट हो सकती है because of the ASEAN region. We can collaborate in economic terms, we can collaborate in security terms, right? अब देखिए म्यांमार से बहुत ज़्यादा सिक्योरिटी थ्रेट्स, इंसर्जेंसी के थ्रेट्स इंडिया के नॉर्थ ईस्ट की तरफ आते हैं, राइट? द नॉर्थ ईस्ट ऑफ इंडिया इज थ्रेटन्ड बाय द इंसर्जेंसी एंड अदर सिक्योरिटी थ्रेट्स कमिंग फ्रॉम दिस रीजन. नाउ इफ इंडिया इज एबल टू interact with these countries in the form of ASEAN as a grouping, India will be able to ensure the security of North East also, right? हम बहुत सारे North East के youth को we can send them to these countries as teachers again for services, as teachers, as doctors, as accountants, किसी भी form में you can sell, you can send North Eastern youth to these ASEAN countries. Again, collaboration with ASEAN will become productive for ensuring economic growth of your Northeast, right? So, am I audible to you? Please respond. Am I audible to you? Please let me know if there is any issue. Audible? Yes. Kanu, please check on your side. So, in that way also this northeastern development can be achieved. So, ASEAN as a grouping can act as a platform for India to ensure the development of its northeastern region. ठीक है, आप नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न स्टेट्स को इनसे कनेक्ट करिए, आप रोड लिंक्स बनाइए, रेलवे लिंक्स बनाइए, जिससे कंस्ट्रक्शन सेक्टर बूम होगा नॉर्थ ईस्ट में, राइट? ट्रेड विल गेट बूम्ड फ्रॉम द नॉर्थ ईस्ट, ट्रेड ऑफ गुड्स विल बूम, trade of services will also improve, right? And when this region has economic prosperity, when this region sees economic prosperity, this region will also see social stability. जो इतने issues आप यहाँ पे witness कर रहे हैं, those will reduced when people have food to eat, when people have clothes to wear, when people have shelter to live. The chances of violence will be very very lower at that time. आप जो अभी यहाँ पे instability देखते हैं, right? All the security threats that you are seeing here, they can be reduced if the economic prosperity of this region is ensured. गरीबी की वजह से बहुत सारे security threats आते हैं. अब जैसे one of the laymanish example is Naxalism का rise क्यों हुआ था? Because there was lot of exploitation, economic exploitation of poor farmers by the landlords, right? So अगर आप economic prosperity ensure कर पाते हैं उन लोगों की, then we might be able to solve the issue of Naxalism, right? Broad example है, although there are many dimensions to that. In the similar fashion, नॉर्थ ईस्ट में आप इंसर्जेंसी देखते हैं, ड्रग ट्रैफिकिंग देखते हैं, ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग देखते हैं. So there are different kind of security and stability threats that are being witnessed by this region. So they can also be reduced to some extent if we are able to bring economic prosperity to this region, right? And economic prosperity will require infrastructure development, right? When you develop the infrastructure of various kinds, schools, hospitals, roads, railways, all of that, that is when you will be able to ensure Northeast's development, and partnering with ASEAN to do that is very much a potential area for India, right? So again, this grouping is relevant for ensuring the Northeast of India, right? So that is again a relevance of ASEAN. Next important relevance of ASEAN apart from these points, next important relevance, seventh point you can add, is realizing the aims and I'll take a space here please. सेवेंथ सिग्निफिकेंस क्या है आसियान का? रियलाइजिंग द एम्स एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव्स ऑफ इंडियाज एक्ट ईस्ट पॉलिसी. Act East policy. So India is under this policy aspiring to connect with Southeast Asia, and what a better organization can be to realize the potential than ASEAN, a grouping of Southeast Asian regions itself. So if you are able to cooperate with ASEAN in infrastructure, in economy, in trade, in investments, in poverty alleviation, capacity development, in any way, if you are able to collaborate with ASEAN, that means you are able to achieve the objectives that you that you set under your foreign policy element, that is Act East policy. So to make Act East policy a success, cooperation with ASEAN is a very high potential area, right? So अपने Act East policy के objectives को achieve कर सकता है इंडिया if it cooperates with ASEAN, right? So that is why, because of this numerous reasons, ASEAN is very significant for India, right? So now that is what is the significance. We have discussed the various points of significance of the ASEAN, but there are a number of challenges also that are being faced by this region. ASEAN को सक्सेस होने में, ASEAN इंडिया के रिलेशंस को सक्सेस होने में, there are a number of challenges that are also important for us to know, right? There are a number of challenges that are presented before India and ASEAN. What are those challenges? The first prominent challenge is the lack of connectivity. अब देखिए, इंडिया को ASEAN रीजन से कनेक्ट करने के लिए, apart from the sea routes, you do not see much infrastructure being there that can connect India to these Southeast Asian countries, right? So India wants to boost its trade, India wants to boost the movement of its people to ASEAN, but how can it do so until or unless it has connectivity via railways, via roadways, via airways, or even via digital technology to this area, right? कनेक्टिविटी तो चाहिए अगर आप कोऑपरेशन को आगे बढ़ाना चाहते हैं, and that is where the first challenge lies. We do not have that direct connectivity, right? Second challenge of this area, high influence of China in this region, right? All these countries are somehow dependent on China because China is a huge economy. China has also introduced its BRI project to put money into these developing countries which require fund for their development. ठीक है, इन सब कंट्रीज़ को पैसे की ज़रूरत है अपनी डेवलपमेंटल और ग्रोथ नीड्स को फुलफिल करने के लिए, एंड दैट इज़ वेयर चाइना इज़ प्लेइंग अ ह्यूज रोल, राइट? So these countries, they cannot freely interact with India because they are under heavy influence of China, right? That is another challenge. उससे भी बड़ा challenge है that China has, territorial linkages with these countries. आप इन countries के, यहाँ पे आप map में देखते हैं हम, China is sitting at the head of these countries. Here in the north you have China, right? These countries, they have very close territorial linkages with China, so it is very difficult for these countries to act directly, against the interests of China. Direct China से attacks आ सकते हैं if these countries, they try to take a very, opposite stand against China, right? So that China factor, restricts or limits India's cooperation with this region, राइट. सो इंडिया जो पोटेंशियल लीवरेज करना चाहता है वो चाइना की प्रेजेंस की वजह से नहीं कर पा रहा है. राइट. और चैलेंजेस क्या है? शॉर्टेज ऑफ फंड्स और रिसोर्सेज. इंडिया डज नॉट हैज दैट फाइनेंशियल कैपेसिटी टू take a role of leadership in this region, right? India will need funds to establish these connectivity projects. India will need funds or money to put, to assist, to provide loans or grants to the ASEAN countries, and that is where the problem is. India does not has that kind of financial muscle to be a influential nation with regard to ASEAN. The financial position of India is not that strong to allow it to cooperate freely with this region, right? So these are some of the challenges that the region is facing, although some initiatives have been taken by India to strengthen its ties. For example, अब देखिए कलादान, इंडिया के इनिशिएटिव्स क्या है इस रीजन के साथ अपना कनेक्टिविटी बढ़ाने के लिए. सम एग्जाम्पल्स यू कैन सी, जैसे कि कलादान मल्टी मोडल प्रोजेक्ट है, राइट. इंडिया म्यांमार थाईलैंड ट्राइलेटरल हाईवे भी बन रहा है. जो हम कनेक्टिविटी की बात कर रहे हैं वो इन प्रोजेक्ट्स के थ्रू अटेम्प्ट किया जा रहा है, दैट थ्रू दीज प्रोजेक्ट्स वी कैन इंश्योर दैट, राइट. इंडिया हैज़ गिवन सागर डॉक्ट्राइन also to ensure growth and security of all the nations in the region, right? India is trying to cooperate with Sagar ideology with the region, right? India has also launched the South Asian satellite, you can say. So space को sector में भी cooperate करने की कोशिश कर रहा है by sharing the important satellite information that can be useful for these countries while they are making various kind of policies with regard to use of their resources or weather management, right? So in ways में India has tried to connect with the ASEAN. India is also investing its money in ASEAN countries investments. For example, जैसे हमने वियतनाम देखा, right? वियतनाम में OVL ONGC विदेश लिमिटेड is investing in natural gas exploration, right? So in that way also India is trying to collaborate. India is also trying to strengthen the defense capacities of these region. Defense capacities of this region. For example, you see, we have, we are under consideration of providing BrahMos missile to these South Asian countries like Vietnam and Philippines. We are under talks to provide this defense material to the ASEAN countries, ASEAN members like Vietnam and Philippines, right? So various initiatives are under process for India to increase its collaboration with the region, but there are much more that is required to be done. India needs to focus on connectivity. India needs to increase its funding, financial assistance to the region to be able to counter check the Chinese influence, right? इसीलिए ASEAN बहुत significant हो सकता है for India for various reasons as we have discussed. In ASEAN can be significant for India in multiple ways, but there are a lot of challenges for India to realize this potential, right? So उन challenges को bypass करने के लिए India will have to work on connectivity, right? Improving commerce, establishing cultural ties, right? Ensuring financial assistance, right? So आगे चल के way forward क्या हो सकता है with regard to ASEAN? Focusing on 3 C's. Connectivity, very very important with regard to any organization. अगर आप उसके objectives achieve करना चाहते हैं, you have to be connected to the region and its countries via road, via railways, via airways, waterways, or even by the digital means. Telecommunication, every form of connectivity has to be ensured. Culture, the cultural links can be revived to establish strong people to people ties, increase positive sentiment in the grouping, right, towards India, right. Buddhism आपका ऐसा connecting point है. Then archaeological conservation में आप assist कर सकते हैं. India is already working in Cambodia, in Vietnam, जैसे temples like Angkor Wat are being maintained by Archaeological Survey of India. So that is a way for India to increase its soft power in the region, right. ऐसे ही commerce को बढ़ाने में focus किया जाना चाहिए. When India follows these 3 C's, India's relations with ASEAN can be transformed, right, and that is what is the objective, right. So these are all the steps that India can take in future, right. So now we are already much ahead the time, so we will discuss RCEP in detail in the next Thursday session. Stay tuned for that. For now, ASEAN has been completed. Please make the notes out of this discussion and also try to write an answer to the question. The C is the mains initiative. As you are aware, every day we give you a question to write on the mains topic that you can post in our website, right. Now, question for today is, discuss the geostrategic relevance of ASEAN for India. Enumerate the challenges in achieving the full potential of ASEAN region. Enumerate the challenges faced by India, लिखिए, faced by India in achieving the full potential of its cooperation with the ASEAN region, right. So you have to write that, discuss the geostrategic relevance of ASEAN for India, enumerate the challenges faced by India in achieving the full potential of its cooperation with the ASEAN region, right. जियोस्ट्रैटेजिक रेलेवेंस क्या है रीजन की और इंडिया के पास चैलेंजेस क्या हैं उस फुल पोटेंशियल को रिलेशनशिप के रियलाइज करने के लिए, राइट. सो you should write this answer in 15 marks or 250 words, right. You will get the discussion to this question. That is all for today's session. If you have any doubts, you can post it in the comment section. We'll respond to that. Thank you so much for joining.